I understand and agree with all your thoughts and principles. However, I interpret your concepts for leaders leading men who are mostly driven, or other leaders who have a desire to make themselves better and maintaining the status.
Yep. So common misperception, right, is that, the military and the SEALs, I say this all the time. Everyone thinks that the military and the SEALs, they think that we're leading Terminator robots, right? And everyone is just driven, and they're going to get up and they're going to do everything. And I just talked about this on the last podcast. It is a bell curve. Mm-hmm. It is a bell curve, and there's a great bunch of guys at the top of the bell curve that are go-getters. There's a solid bunch of guys in the middle, and there's the lower guys that are bums. And so this interpretation that the concepts that I talk about are just for leading these front-running A personalities that just make everything happen, not correct. There are SEALs that don't want to work. There are SEALs that want to take shortcuts. There are SEALs that want to skate by. Then you get outside. Then you're working with Iraqi soldiers that are unmotivated, untrained, poorly equipped. We got to work with these guys. We got bosses. I got bosses in the SEAL teams that are either an egomaniac or that are ultra risk averse. You can have any of this stuff going on. You can have your guys that are risk averse. You can have guys that are too crazy. You got you know what they are? They're humans. They're individuals. They're human beings. And because they're human beings, even in special operations, and sometimes it's especially in special operations, because when you get in special operations, you get guys that have huge egos and attitudes. Mm-hmm. And so, you think that they just want to do whatever you tell them to do? No, they got their own idea. They got their own method. They got their own plan. They got their own, what they think they're a tactical genius. So you got to get around that. So what does it mean? It means you have to lead them. And it's the common theme that I'm talking about all the time. What does that mean? You got to build relationships. You got to build the trust. You got to make sure they understand why they're doing what they're doing. You got to make sure they understand the strategic impact. You got to empower them. You got to set a good example. You got to listen to them. You got to take input. You got to give them responsibility. And when I say responsibility, I mean real responsibility. You got to build them up. You got to make them better. You got to show them and let them see, not in a in your face way, but you got to subtly let them see what self-improvement means to them and how they can better their position and what drive will get them. You got to give them ownership of stuff. And you got to let that ownership grow into extreme ownership where they really want to own things. And you got to teach them to lead, and you got to put them in leadership positions, and you got to show your trust by actually following them sometimes. And again, people ask me these questions, I'm a new leader. How do I lead? I got a new person. How do I lead them? It's the same answers. It's the same answers all the time. The principles of leadership. Now the nuances are there. Yes, the nuances are there. And I have to nuance for Echo, then I got a nuance for this guy over here, and I got a nuance for this group over here. The nuances are there, but the basic principles are the same. Who am I going to be in charge of that I'm not going to try and build a relationship of trust with them? Who's that? The answer is nobody. Yeah. Who is it that I don't want to set a good example for? The answer is nobody. Who is it that I'm not going to listen to? If you don't listen to people, you alienate them. You don't want to be part of the team. Things are universal. Mm. And again, there's nuances because you might have to make adaptations. And when we did battle leadership with Adolf von Schell, and he talks about distinctly these three different types of commanders and how the boss gave them each their own little adjusted order because he was dealing with their personalities. Mm-hmm. So yes, you got to deal with the personalities, but that doesn't mean you're doing something different from the principles. Mm. So when you get to the bottom of the bell curve, and you might see some people that might need to be replaced, they might need to be removed, but I'll tell you what, most likely they just need to be led.
The reason that, or I think one of the reasons why the perception is that all your guys are robots, and I'm going to give you an order, they follow it. Mm-hmm. No questions. That is like movies, right? Like A Few Good Men. Remember Jack Nicholson? He's like, people follow orders or people die. Or
Yeah.
that was his thing. And they say that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but they do capture it in some Hollywood movies where they show how mutinies take place and how things go wrong and how the new lieutenant in Vietnam is going to get fragged by his own people. That stuff's real.
Yeah.
That stuff's real. So it's just it's a misperception. The other misperception is because of boot camp. A lot of military movies they show a significant amount of time in boot camp, but boot camp is a matter of weeks in a career. I think the Marine Corps boot camp is 13 weeks. I think the Army boot camp is 10 weeks. Boot camp is a very short period of time in your 4-year, 6-year, 8-year, 10-year, 20-year career. Boot camp is, I talked about the indoctrinational times in the military. They are very short periods of time compared to your whole career. And in boot camp, when your drill instructor says drop down and do push-ups, you drop down and do push-ups.
Yeah. Okay.
In boot camp, when your drill instructor says pick up that, make your bed, you make your bed. And if you don't, they yell at you, and they yell at you until you do make your bed. So people get that idea that that's the way the military is run.
Yeah. I would, yep.
And that is, a great example is Full Metal Jacket, the movie, which is a great movie, but the boot camp scene is half the movie.
Yeah.
But in reality, even if you were a guy in Vietnam, boot camp is 13 weeks, and then you went on into Vietnam for a year. So it's a fraction of what your real career is like. Right. And so people get that impression that you're just going to be able to bark orders and everyone's going to listen to you. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. And there's a great video. It's called Charlie Company in anyways, I forget the name of the video, but it's about a company in Vietnam, Charlie Company, and maybe if you remind me, I'll put it on the website. It shows 2 company commanders. But anyways, to make a long story short, these guys, they don't like their new company commander. And at first they're resistant to him. And, he says, listen, these guys got to learn that they're just going to have to do what I tell them. And then it fast forwards a couple months. And they interview him again, and he goes, how's everything going? He goes, they get it now. And they realize that they just had to listen to me and do what I told them. And then they go out in the field with the guys. And the guys in the field, they're supposed to be doing things, and they're just not doing them. They're literally calling back like, we did a patrol. Yeah. They didn't do it. Yeah, we moved positions. They didn't move positions. Yeah, we're going to do another foot patrol tonight. They're not doing it. So he was under the impression that everyone had buckled to his will. Right. They were just completely snowing him, and he had no idea. Yeah. So that's what happens in the military. Yeah. If you don't lead your people and you just order them around, and you think that everyone's just this how'd they describe it here? Men who are mostly driven, or leaders who have a desire to make themselves better. I mean, if anybody in a position with guys like that, the leadership job is going to be very easy. You just tell them what to do and they do it. Right. I mean, I could give you example upon example upon example of stuff in the SEAL teams where what I had to do to get people convinced that this was the right thing to do. Yeah. I mean, it is a classic example is telling guys, okay, we're going to take Iraqi soldiers on every operation. So these guys were saying, are you kidding me? Well, they just didn't go, hey, cool, Jocko, we'll do exactly what you tell us. Right. No, they're like, what are you talking about? We're not taking these guys out. Why would we do that? It's going to be risky. These guys aren't trustworthy. They're not trained. Right. They had a million reasons why not to do that. No. But how do you get them to do it? You explain to them why. You explain to them the strategic importance. You have built trust with them. You tell them that they're going to take ownership of the Iraqis. I mean, it's everything that I just said. That's what you do. That's a classic example. So, yes, once again, if you're in a leadership position, you have to lead.
You ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a part in that movie that they weren't down for the orders. Mm-hmm. Remember that? It was kind of like a little pivotal part where they were going to go take a machine gun nest. Mm-hmm. And they were like, man, we don't have to do this. So they all kind of got together and hey, seems like unnecessary risk. And he kind of tripped out a little bit and kind of forced them to do it. And they were like, all right, whatever, kind of reluctantly. Then one of the guys died and stuff. But anyway, that's an example of some of the movies where they, And especially, when we were just talking about World War I,
that one portion of the book where he says, you know what, we got ordered to do this thing. I didn't feel good about it, but it was an order. We were going to do it. So there's examples from the past, especially where, it's definitely was more like that in the past. In World War I, obviously it was like that. Unfortunately, it was like that.
Yeah.
Because it caused people to continue, to execute these operations that were just going to get people killed. Yeah. And, actually, Leif and I were talking about that last week. Pickett's charge, Gettysburg, they sent the troops up and they got slaughtered. And they came, the survivors came back, and Lee was, basically in tears, like, hey, I'm sorry this happened. This was my fault. He took ownership of it. And I hope I'm getting the story right. But that's the general gist of the story. But then the big story was that the guys were like, hey, we'll go again. If because you're such a great leader, we'll go again. And Leif, was kind of like, that's what World War, that's what happened. That shows you that guys were willing. And I said, yeah, but the difference is in World War I, they sent him again. They sent him over and over. Lee was regretting, and I'm sorry, and I did something that got you, a bunch of guys killed. It's horrible. In World War I, they're like, yeah, it happened. I'm going again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that happens again. We're doing it again and again and again, and it's just I'll always just be horrified by that, and hopefully, man progresses beyond that. And again, part of that is, as a person, you have to question. You have to be a rebel. You have to question what people are telling you and why they're telling it to you. Mm-hmm. If my boss doesn't tell me why I'm doing my operation, and I continue to execute it, that's my fault. I need to raise my hand and say, boss, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? I don't understand. You got to take that initiative. Because if you're just blindly following orders, I don't want somebody that's blindly following orders. I never want people that blindly follow my orders. I want people that say, oh, boss, wait, why are we doing this? Why is this happening? Because I want leaders underneath me that know how to lead. And you know what? When you build the trust and you build the relationships, those guys will do anything for you. And my guys in my task, they do anything. I mean, I know it. They did over and over again. Did operations that were crazy and hard and dangerous and risky. Never did anyone say, we're not doing this. They said, okay, we understand. What's the mission? All right. So you got to build that relationship. Again, it's the same basic principles of leading human beings. Yeah. And that's what you got to do. But to think that you're just going to order people to do things, it's not happening. Long answer to a good question. That was actually an interesting perspective. And I know it's a perspective that a lot of people have. People always think, well, you led SEALs and they're elite. So that was easy.
Yeah. But before you told me, that's kind of what I figured.
Yeah.